Our first bit of news is that Sony did a complete backflip over shutting down the PS3 and Vita stores. So originally, the PS3 and PSP store were going to close on the 2nd of July this year, and the Vita store shortly after on the 27th of August. They have decided they will proceed with shutting down the PSP store on the 2nd of July, so that hasn't changed. But with PS3 and the Vita, they have backflipped and essentially not even said what they're going to do in the future. Now, it seems obvious that they will shut it down eventually, but they will not shut it down at the moment. So they did post something on their blog, as they are prone to do. And so this is quoting from them. We see now that many of you are incredibly passionate about being able to continue purchasing classic games on PS3 and PS Vita for the foreseeable future. So I'm glad we are able to find a solution to continue operations. So this was actually published under Jack Ryan's name, the head of Sony. I'm waiting for Swinny to correct me.
I'm not gonna mention
Jim Ryan. So at least I give the guy credit that he's putting it under his own name.
That's nice.
It's very easy to put it under anyone else.
Wait. But how do you find a solution to not having to do anything? Literally, they just didn't have to do anything. Like, just leave it alone.
No.
That was the solution.
Because if you read their blog post, they're talking about maintaining the store is costing them a lot of money, and there's probably.
So the solution is they just put more money on it. That's it. They just continued putting money into it.
To be fair, like, that's
the solution. What else is their solution? They don't need to do anything else.
No, but like
they don't need to throw more servers. They don't need to. They just needed to find more money.
No, but they could have been servers that were due for replacement or
so you just throw more money at it.
Decommissioning.
No.
But I'm saying that, like, if you had put plans in place to decommission this stuff, knowing that, okay, well, we don't need to bother replacing all that stuff because it's going to be decommissioned. Well, you have to potentially change.
Yeah, so you just throw more money at it and you replace the hardware if you need to. That's literally the solution.
I get your point, Mike, but you know that things aren't as simple as, okay, just.
No, I know that. I know. I work in a business environment, unfortunately. You got to put a business case together. You got to look at the ongoing costs. You got to look at the bottom line. You know more about this, Intergot. You do all the spreadsheets as well.
But all of that stuff's important. I know people are very dispassionate about it, but Sony as a company, PlayStation's actually a massive driver of their profitability.
I'm kidding. I know.
Every dollar counts, right? So
of course.
They might not even be making money on the PlayStation 3 store. Because
it's possible they're losing money on
to keep it
up.
up.
Absolutely. It could just be a lot of people are just downloading old content that they've already paid for a long time ago, and they're not actually buying anything new. So
I do actually sympathize with them.
But... so do I. I'm kidding around. So do I. But all I'm saying is, really, in the end, the realistic solution is we need to spend more money on this. Yeah. That's it. That's
I don't know about you guys, but I wonder if this would have hit the same if they said, at the end of 2022, we're closing down the PS3 and Vita stores.
What do you reckon? A year would have made a difference? I think
a year and a half.
You're saying that they didn't give people enough time. It was too sudden, and people freaked out about it.
I honestly think even people who are like reasonable, like me, I'm not saying everyone's unreasonable.
I wouldn't say you're reasonable either.
I understand that all these stores will close, right? Because you can't operate them forever in perpetuity. So there's got to be an end date to all of them. I think. Like just going, hey, we're going to close it, and it's like a couple of months. It's very unfair because people may go, I want to buy a Vita, or like even in the case of Lilymo Studios, they were making a Vita game, right, for the Vita. Yeah. They got a test kit just like a month before, and then they announced that they're closing the store. Yeah.
What a whirlwind month for them this would have been.
Yeah, and they picked this project up
now
again.
We're back.
Yeah, so they're going to make it.
No, but here's the thing, right? I know you think about this in a reasonable way, and I'm not saying people who don't have this expectation are unreasonable. I think it's somewhat reasonable to assume when you buy a piece of software, a lot of people don't really think hard enough that you're only buying the license.
Oh, correct.
And that the license is bound by a lot of clauses, including the fact that you could lose your license at any time that they want. Yeah. And you don't really think like that, though. And that's to be fair on people, I get why you don't think like that. Because you think, man, I'm spending my hard-earned cash on this thing. It should be mine forever. But the reality is it isn't.
Yeah.
And even a physical disc of something is technically not yours forever. Like, yeah, you can have the physical disc, but number one, you don't own the rights to it. You basically get a license to use that.
It's
disc.
exactly the same.
And number two, that disc is actually going to break down eventually because it's still plastic.
I mean, that is more so in the case of not being able to re-download games, which wouldn't have been part of this. They still would have had the ability to re-download games.
Well, not up. Yeah. Even including updates, that's true.
Yeah.
But however long that would have run for is quite interesting as well.
Yeah.
So I still have a copy of Final Fantasy VII on the PSP, which was actually one of the coolest versions in my opinion.
I'm actually more bothered about that. Like that, you won't, like, especially with PS4 and things like that, where some games, like, Cyberpunk is the best example you could ever have. It's unplayable. It's so unplayable. Put it off the store, right?
Yeah.
So in 10 years' time, if you buy a physical version of Cyberpunk and there's no way to update it, it's just a piece of junk, essentially.
Yeah, correct. And look at LA Noire, a game we recently played. There's a huge update on Switch because the cartridge itself doesn't hold the whole game. Why would you even? Can it even be playable?
No, it's not.
Would you
It's
even
not
be able to
playable
play
without
it?
it.
You need to have your physical cartridge becomes practically useless at that point.
Yeah. It's effectively a download game, those type of games. And I normally avoid them.
Much.
But in the case of LA Noire, it was cheaper to buy it physical than get the digital version. Digital version was like 90 Australian dollars, which was insane for a game that's like 10 years old. So, yeah, look, I'm really pleased that Sony did this. Sony has been massively bashed by the games press in the last couple of months. I don't think they've been doing as bad of a job as everyone is sort of saying that they are. And there is this mentality, and I'd love to get your input on this, Swinny, of, everyone, it's the exact same people who go, we don't want a console war, we don't believe that's so stupid, blah, blah, blah. And then they always posit Sony versus Microsoft, Xbox versus PlayStation. Look at all the good things that Xbox is doing and Sony's not doing a good job. I mean, like, they want to fuel this fire because it gets hits and views and things like that. But how do you look at it from that perspective, Swinny?
I mean, look, everyone loves a good fight, right? So it gets interest.
It does get interest, yeah.
As much as we find it ridiculous to say, oh, this console versus this console. It's like, well, if you like a console and you like playing the games on it, then cool, whatever, each to their own. But it's like, we went through this when we were growing up with Nintendo versus Sega, and then it moved on to, Sony versus, PlayStation versus Nintendo 64, and then just kept going. You're always going to have this. You're always going to have people, just like, people barrack for sports teams. You're gonna have people that barrack for consoles, and it's just what they're going to do.
Religions, everything. Can't we just all get along and all just
enjoy
our consoles and...
We want console harmony. That's what
we do. We want console harmony.
Or just buy them all, right? But that's very different, right? You can't barrack for more than one team.
Well, you can.
No,
why not?
It's just wrong.
Why not? Why is it wrong? Why not? What if I like multiple teams?
No, it's impossible. You can't be a real fan.
You know what? I'm going to get into sports. I'm going to get into AFL, and I'm going to barrack for multiple teams.
But you know what will happen? You'll get into it, and then you won't actually go for multiple teams.
Why wouldn't I go for multiple teams?
It's just not what happens.
I don't get the whole concept of going for a single team. I don't get it.
You have to.
It's kind of weird to say this as a straight guy. I don't get the concept of going for a single team. I feel like, going for multiple teams makes so much more sense. I
don't really I think I understand what your reference is with a straight guy. I think it's very clumsy, but...
Whatever, but why would you? I just don't get the whole mentality behind. Oh, it's us. This is my team.
Because that's the whole point of it. It's meant to be an us versus them mentality. It's meant to be
but why can't
us versus a universe.
Why can't you have multiple us's and then you go 1 week I'm going for this team.
So what happens when they play against each other?
That's the beauty of it. That's when it becomes ultra interesting. Because all of a sudden you're like super torn.
No,
and you're you're fighting against your own psyche as to who is the ultimate winner in your own mind.
I get what Mike's saying, but there's no pansexuality in sports.
Well, thank you. Oh, wow. Even the contrarian, he can't even get his contrarian juice going on.
I think that there should be. I think people should just be more willing to be open to the idea of supporting multiple teams in the same thing.
No, can't happen.
This whole us versus them mentality is just bad.
So going back to this, and I would actually love for people to come at me, or like not come at me, but like raise this in the comments if they get to this point of the video.
Oh, they will.
I was actually looking at buying a Vita, Then, like, so what I do is I look at, okay, Vita, cool. And then I'm like, okay, what games are there that are on Vita that I can't get anywhere else in a reasonable way, right? So, you know, like I do this always when I buy stuff. I'm like, oh, do I really need it? Like the PS3 is pretty cool because there's still some games on the PS3 that are only playable there, or, you know, the experiences that you want to have there. So I was going through Vita and I'm like, it seems like an extremely short list of games.
Of exclusives.
Yeah, that are worth it to get it. So
Man, I had it for such a short period of time. I don't even remember what's on it.
I mean, like the Uncharted game, like Uncharted Golden Abyss. It's kind of interesting. But there's a lot of games that I'm just like, you can get the experiences other places. Like Persona 4 Golden is probably the number one. That's on PC now as well.
Oh, okay. So there's alternatives. Whereas like with the 3DS, there were certain games that only came out on the 3DS, and I'm glad I got it again.
Yeah, exactly.
But
there's actually quite a few cool exclusives.
If you think at the time, though, this was the only way to play games, these games handheld.
Yes, for sure.
Which is an awesome experience, by the way. Again, you know, equating it to the Switch, the handheld is what I do most of it on, and it's just I just love the feeling of playing certain games handheld on the Switch.
Just going back to this store. Look, this is obviously a fantastic backflip.
Yeah,
but there is part
Sony.
of me that's still. I think this is the mic creeping in.
What?
It's like
it's inching in.
Do you think that there's part of them that anticipated this backlash to then make the future plan so that when they go to shut them down in the future, they've already been through this and now they've like, well, we gave an extension.
I feel like, of course, they're going to plan for a backlash. It's not like they go, oh, we're just going to shut this thing down. No one's going to give a shit.
No, I think, but
of course they knew it was going to happen.
Plan to have this like backup date option in the future for shutting down whatever that might be.
I won't reveal too much information, but you know, having worked at a lot of corporates, there's only been once or twice ever that they've been a bit nefarious like that, and that's not how they do it. They don't announce it and get the backlash. What they do is they just leak it to like the equivalent of IGN, you know, and say, "Hey, we're going to shut it down," and then people go, "Oh my god, this is unbelievable!" Blah 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 blah, and then they make the worst version. They give it to IGN, and then they come out with a lighter version of it. So you know they'll do something like say, "We're going to shut it," and it kind of happened maybe to a degree. You know how the story actually got published beforehand, but typically what they'll do is they'll go, "We're going to shut it down by mid-year." And then when they actually do it, they say, "Oh, it's going to be shut down by the end of next year." And everyone's like, "Well, it's kind of reasonable. They're shutting it down the end of next year." A lot of the heat goes out of it at that stage. I think this was just a stuff up because Jim Ryan, he just does not believe in like the legacy content. Like he's been on the record as like he's just not interested in it. And I'd imagine because he's not a gamer, I'd imagine he just looks at the numbers and goes, "This is not selling. No one cares about it." And they're getting confused between people caring versus actually making money. There's a lot of people that care about this content, but they're just not buying it. So, you know, you won't see that through the numbers. So I don't think there's almost any chance that they did it like that. They would have done it in a different way if they would have wanted to do that. All right, let's jump into the next story. I'm actually really excited about this one.